Hey, good morning, Facebook. It is Andy Doc Melder here, coming live to you from Katy, Texas. What a beautiful morning it is. I had a really incredible morning. I was really kind of dragging along this morning. I wasn't as well prepared for this as I wanted to be, admittedly. But I got out here and, persevered, if you will, and got out here in the morning. Was just beautiful. The full moon was setting over behind me this direction to the west, and the sun was rising over this direction to the east, and in about, I don't know, a 10-minute span of time, the moon went down, the sun came up. And if you don't think that's something special, the full moon and the sun coming up, then I don't know if we can be friends. No, I'm just kidding. We can be friends, but I don't know what we'll have to talk about. So anyways, I felt like it was a really blessed and special morning to see that and feel the power of the universe around me. And so set things off right and set the tone for the day. And I think that's really important, to be up in the morning with the rising sun, so to speak. But that's another day and another topic. How's everybody doing? Checking in, right? Like mental health. That's a tough one. I think this pandemic has exposed a lot of people's personal weaknesses when you have a lot of more time on your hands and you're working less, stress levels are high. If you're not feeling that, then blessed be, you are a low stress individual. But for the rest of us out there, we get stressed out. We do dumb things because our mental health suffers. And being diagnosed with PTSD, service-connected veteran, disability, and being a veteran, and something that I've noticed and something that I just kind of wanted to talk about was, something I've talked about a lot for people that know me is, but veterans have this unique opportunity to change people's perceptions about mental health, especially when it comes to trauma-based stuff. And we don't necessarily always take that opportunity and use it to the best of our advantage. One of the subcultures, and it's kind of more of its own culture amongst the veteran community, I notice, is like this disgruntled or dysfunctional veteran type mentality. T-shirts that I get advertisements for on Facebook all the time, and if you're a vet, I'm sure you see them, that are like, I'm a veteran, and because of that, I'm angry, and you should stay away from me, and don't say stupid things around me, or I'll call you out. While that's approaching mental health in one aspect of it, I certainly can disagree. I can, understand that sentiment, right? Like, I've been there. I am still there every day of my life. There's no doubt about it. But what good does that do the world or me to walk around with that on my shoulders? That kind of mentality. If you look at PTSD and trauma in the stages of grief, anger is just one of the first ones, right? Denial and anger, denial comes first, anger comes later, and all these different things, right? So that means in the healing process that you might have recognized that you have an issue, but then you just put yourself only part of the way there. So I think that we as a veteran community owe it to society to work through these traumas, push ourselves past that bit of anger, and trust me, I'm speaking from first-hand experience here, and keep going with the work and talking to the public about what it's like, because if you assign yourself to that ideology, you've assigned yourself to just staying in one place in your healing path, and healing from trauma is a continuous path, and it never goes away, because there's always going to be flashbacks, there's always going to be reminders, but they don't have to ruin you the same way that they did in the past. And that's something that, you know, I really want people to understand about trauma, and some of the ways that we can start understanding how it affects your mental health. That everybody has trauma. Everybody has it, and how it's affected you is affected you and maybe in the minutest of ways, or just in your mentality and how you think. If you've been through a divorce, and maybe how you treat, you know, the opposite sex from that point forward. I mean, there's just different scenarios out there that I could go on and on and on about, that would probably resonate with every single one of you, whether they be from childhood past experiences that you've just never been able to let go of. They might not seem traumatic in this like grand scheme, like veterans have gone through combat and all these different things, and yes, certainly very traumatic experiences, but everything else in between the most traumatic thing you could experience and no trauma at all is still trauma. Like everything else in between those two things, on a scale of 1 to 1 billion, you know, is still on the scale. It still registers, and how people affect that. And we're going to continue this series. We're going to keep talking about how you can work through some of these things once you start to understand it. But with that understanding, it's like, what's the perception here? Like, oh, that guy's crazy because he has PTSD, or that guy's crazy because he goes to see a shrink, or I'm too strong of a man to admit that I have emotions. Those are toxic feelings that are keeping people from really having an understanding of what mental health is. And I'm a whole human being with guts, with a liver, you know, with a heart, with lungs. All of those things have to be healthy, right? Well, I also have a mind, and if my mind is not healthy, the rest of those systems are going to suffer. That is an absolute fact that cannot be refuted by science, by the mystics, by anybody that's just been around for a while. Understands that if you're not healthy in the mind, you will get sick physically, and your spirit will suffer as well. So I can't express that enough, that when it comes to total wellness, and you know, we are the total wellness people, the mind is where it all begins. So, you know, the guts, the mind, when you can get those two things right, your other systems will generally follow. And so that's enough about that. The perception piece of it, you know, I hope y'all take away that we all deal with these things. Our perceptions of how to heal and where we are at in that process as veterans, or as trauma, patients or whatever, that perception needs to change. People need to understand that it's not a death sentence. They can keep pushing forward and get past these traumas and go on to live happy, loving, successful lives. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect and pretty, but it means it can be done. And the second part of it is the people that are supposedly on the outside looking in. Open your hearts to patience, empathy, and understanding. And everybody in the world needs to go through some trauma-based teachings and understand trauma, because it affects everyone. And so if you lived in an area where there was a bunch of mosquitoes that spread some sort of, disease, you would want to know everything about those mosquitoes and about that disease. Well, you live in a world where trauma is everywhere, and you should start learning more and more and more about it, including myself. So anyways, that's the topic of discussion today. I hope that makes sense. What kind of coffee y'all drinking? Today it's the breakfast blunt. And it's pretty tasty. It's not my favorite, but it might be my second favorite. Just a regular medium, get you going kind of coffee, and great in the morning. So anyways, with that being said, we're going to do some shoulder stretches today, and I kind of wanted to touch base real quick on this loose version definition of the word stretching to me and others. You know, especially if you're like from like you played football in Texas like I did, or you went to the military or whatever, and you're doing those like count stretching where you're like touching your toes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're just like trying to get through. That's good. I mean, I'm not knocking that if you're doing the stretches properly. It's any stretching is better than no stretching. I'm talking what we're doing is a little bit more movement-based stretching, warming up some of the joints and muscles in your body, just loosely, and getting yourself going for the morning. Okay, if you want to do some of that deeper stretching, more power to you. I still recommend that if you're post age 25, you do these warm-up stretches before you even get into the deeper stretching, and then also before and after, especially after any strenuous physical activity. So I know I say that because when I was like 20, even before, like by 24, stretching was like, okay, let's do it. All right, now let's go. And I ran a lot back then. And then I do a little bit of stretching afterwards. Now at the almost age of 40, 39, I'm coming up on 39. I have to do these warm-up stretches because my body is in pretty bad shape. And so if I was just to go do that kind of stuff that I used to do, I would injure myself, no doubt. So today we're gonna do a pretty simple stretch, movement exercise, if you will. I like to just put one hand here right over my chest, and then we're going to do shoulder rotations over the top. I like to go 5 each way. And if you're trying to incorporate some yogic breathing into this, and then I go back, you definitely can. And you can, you know, give your inhale on the up and your exhale on the down, and you can go as slow as you want and you need, and you can do as many of these as you need. I just like 5, especially for the interest of time. We're gonna go around this way, and this is just helping warm up those shoulder cuffs. We've got a ligament that comes right in here that's gonna help stretch that out. These are the joints that you're gonna have to rely on for the rest of your life to reach and grab things. And if you think about health and wellness in the terms of longevity, reaching and grabbing things could be in the difference between doing your own shopping, your grocery shopping, and having to have somebody do it for you, or things like that. So just kind of think about that and what it means to you. All right, so that was it. Just a couple of rotations forward, a couple of rotations back, warm up these joints. Here we've already, you know, if y'all followed me last week, we've already warmed up the head and neck. And then we're gonna just do a little bit of the trapezies in the chest and back here in the shoulders as well. If you're in the military, we used to call this the chain breaker, where we go 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, right? We're not gonna do that. We're just gonna go real slow, gentle, and I like to rotate my hands in and out like that. Upwards, palms facing upwards, then down. And you can incorporate that yogic breathing in with this as well, if you know what I'm talking about. And there you have it. We got one more, and this is just going to be simple. I like to incorporate a little bit of twisting. We'll get into the twisting a little bit more, but this is just kind of like a reaching and grabbing type exercise. So you're just going to come across your body, and you're going to just go like this. Slow, but methodic. And we're going to start kind of warming up those intercostal rib spaces along with our lat and our shoulder and our triceps and deltoids and shoulders all up in here. So I like this, and you can give it a little pull. And the first yogini that I took yoga from, she was a big fan of stretching and movement as a part of stretching, not just like doing the classic yoga poses, which are good, but then actually, you know, maybe adding a little twist or movement element into the pose as well. That's getting a little bit more advanced, but this is just kind of the basic versions of some of these things that you can do to move and stretch at the same time and get a little bit of heart rate going. So what's wrong with that? I don't know. Thank y'all very much for joining me today here in Katy, and that's pretty much it. Have a blessed day, and namaste, Katy.